Hi again, fellas, and welcome back to Quite with a Y. I have to upload a lot less than I have been, man. If I keep it up, someone's gonna think I'm capable of commitment. And I know that title is kind of dramatic, he's why I'm still here, but it's got some truth to it. This topic actually came suggested in the kwytebox@gmail.com if you want to send stuff there, where a lot of people asked what my journey on YouTube was like and kind of what I learned or what the process was like for me. But it seemed like more often than not, folks were asking how I first got into everything, and that's something I wanted to hyper-focus in on today. The man whose face you clicked on to watch this video is the first YouTuber I ever watched. This is Ryan Higa, and I could go for hours about him, but I'll try not to. Like, not just the first YouTuber I chose to actively follow, but like the person who made the first YouTube video I ever saw. He was my introduction to the site as a concept. Also, I can just like see all the comments noting how it did not say his username once in this video. If you know who he is, you know why. There's nothing wrong with saying it. I'm just like a massive pussy. Plus, Ryan is so much easier to pronounce for me. I'm sure a lot of y'all can relate to having this kind of memory where somebody you knew, like whether it is a sibling or a friend, would tell you to come over to the computer they're at, either because you're like at their house or some shit on the family computer, or it was in the middle of computer lab, and they'd show you this video they found on the site called YouTube, and that was like a lot of people's first introductions. And out of any person on the site who I have actively kept up with, and still do to some extent to this day, he is by far the person I followed the longest. He's like the YouTuber slash creator who's the ground zero for everything that is the disaster of mine. And I really hope he doesn't see this video. I'm not under the illusion that he probably will, but it's happened before because the title's real dick sucky and the rest of this video is going to be real dick sucky about like something that was really, really cool to me as a kid, and I still cherish those memories, all that gay shit. It feels a little easier because I don't feel like I'm alone in having some of those feelings, as Ryan Higa is the closest thing to your favorite YouTuber's favorite YouTuber that exists. I've seen him called the godfather of the site more than once, and in several ways I agree. If you want proof, it's really easy to find people in the Sidemen talking about it. Like, KSI loves Ryan Higa. He is just one of the longest standing YouTubers, period, and he has earned a lot of respect for his tenure. And whether Ryan knew it or not when he was doing it at that time, in like the early 2010s when this whole YouTube stuff was able to be profitable or be a career for a lot of people, but nobody really knew what that meant because it was so young, I think he, at least for me, shaped the idea of like what a YouTuber was for the rest of my life. That was definitely an exaggeration. Like, he's one of many YouTubers from around that era that shaped the culture as what it is today, or set the groundwork for it at least. But he's also the one I'm biased towards, so you know, I'll give him a little extra credit. I'll treat him like he's John Hancock and give him the biggest space to sign his name on the YouTube Declaration of Independence. I think if you got into him around the time that I did, the series that pretty much everybody knew him for was the How to Be Blank series. It started with How to Be Ninja, and the concept was like a nerdy dude getting beat up by a not nerdy dude, needing to learn how to defend himself, and this was an instructional video on how to do that exactly. The idea was that no matter what this kid did, he just could not stop getting bullied. He tried being a ninja, he tried being gangster, he tried being emo, he even like tried being a dedicated nerd, like trying to just be a geek. And that shit just never worked out for him, man. He got the shit whooped out of him. I know so many like tiny details and trivia about those videos off the top of my head. Things I didn't remember I knew until like this video idea like popped in my head. I would watch those videos obsessively, like nonstop, multiple times a day, like sometimes in a row. Baby sensory videos used to look a lot different than they do today, but looking back on everything, it feels like that was probably one of my first hyperfixations ever. There was a time in my life when I knew a lot of those videos word for word and would say it as it happened. I wonder if my parents knew something was wrong with me, but they just could not figure out what specifically. Like, it's clearly several things. I don't even know what I was thinking back then. That shit just held my attention, and I only remember how engaged I was. I would literally try to recreate the videos shot for shot, beat for beat. I was so interested in the making of these silly little goofy internet videos. Like, I'd watch the behind the scenes for How to Be Ninja. I'm doing the quotation fingers here, but after I mastered the craft, I finally felt ready to go on to making my own How to Be Blank videos. I had so many dumb ideas that were just straight up knockoffs, and I can't remember a single one of them. I'm sure there's footage of that happening somewhere in storage, but I do not intend to look. And I wasn't alone with these knockoffs. When I ran out of Ryan Higa videos to watch, or like I couldn't watch How to Be Ninja for the 7th time that week, I moved on to folks who were making their own spin-offs of how to be specific things. That definitely held my attention at times, but not in the way that Ryan's original charm did or whatever. These videos never made it to YouTube. I was legit just recording them on a camera, not editing them, because I didn't know what a fucking video editing software was. And I assumed it would magic itself together, but they never went on the internet because, as you guys might know, my mom literally banned me from that shit. shit. It was a struggle being a big fan of YouTube without access to YouTube. But it truthfully was one of those first things that got those kind of creative juices flowing for me. One of the things that sticks out in my brain as I had like a huge reaction to it when I first learned was in the intro of those videos, they would have the bully character, Ryan, beating up the nerd character, Sean, and like he would always just grab him and throw him to the floor in what looked like real to me, but obviously was choreographed, and they would make the sound effects of getting hit and Sean crying in pain in camera. He'd like make nerdy noises of pain and then slap the floor with his hand to like, you know, to mimic the sound of somebody's ribs getting caved in and getting curb stomped. It was so cool to me that they did that in camera. Like they made the illusion happen as they were recording with like nothing in post. And to be fair, that's probably because at the time, there were no YouTubers putting images on the damn screen. You think after cutting that shit up, people were looking back? No! That was the standout one for sure, but it was things like it where at that age, it was like the first time I had seen something I thought was cool get explained to me and see how they'd done it, and figuring it out, knowing how they did it was actually really cool. It didn't ruin it for me. I was like, damn, I want to do that now. It was one of the first things that ever got those kind of creative juices flowing for me, and I really don't think there's me doing this as a job or whatever it might look like in the future without having seen that as a kid. And I definitely watched him the most as a kid, but like I eventually petered off. Like I'd go watch other YouTubers and videos, got into gaming stuff, but somehow Ryan really never left my purview. I found him again after falling off when I was in elementary school. I know that probably doesn't sound like it could have been a big leap of time, but a month feels like a year at that age. And rewatching his old stuff, I still found to be fun, but his new stuff felt like a step up and like, oh my god, this dude just keeps getting better. Around then, it was like something I could show to my friends who maybe didn't know YouTube that well or whose parents wouldn't let them on the site at their houses. And when we were at school or they'd come over to my place, I would show them Ryan Higa a lot of the time. And more often than not, they got a lot of that same laughter out of it that I did. I was able to bond with these people over a shared interest that I had put them onto, that I could now hold over their head for eternity. But you know, I also had like a dark and brooding middle school phase. I don't need to give you details. You know exactly what that fucking looked like. How would you know? Well, you either had one in the past or you're in one right fucking now. I know my audience. I'm sorry, you guys don't deserve this. But as a result, I moved on to other YouTubers. I started watching cool, adult, mature gamers who played Call of Duty and gun games. But somehow I still always found myself at some point or another coming back to Ryan Higa's channel and watching whatever he had put out recently or rewatching his old stuff and finding a lot of the same comfort that I did when I was younger. I was a regular viewer of both his main and second channel into my adulthood, all the way up until he stopped uploading on the main because like his production crew all went their separate ways. And you guys also know I was raised terminally online. I did not get outside. All I did was watch YouTube. But the types of folks who would skulk around on the internet back in like early 2010s who were my age, and if you watch YouTube back then, Ryan was like seen as a pillar. And Ryan Higa, first and foremost, was an internet star, so he was big with people on the internet. In the communities I actually was active in regularly, like DeviantArt, even for like completely separate fandoms like Sonic the Hedgehog, there were plenty of folks in there who had grown up watching Ryan Higa because he's just like a classic creator. If you brought it up in those circles, there was a good chance someone else knew and would have a good discussion with you about it and how much fun they had watching those videos. This bled over to other YouTubers as well, some of which who, by a certain point, were some of the generation influenced by him to start creating, where they'd bring him up very casually as like a kind of given. Ryan was like the longest standing person on YouTube who just kept crushing it if he kept wanting to. I really do feel Ryan Higa's content was always all ages. Like, it was, out of a lot of the YouTubers at the time, one of the safer ones to show to your kids. But there's still a lot of charm there, even as an adult, and it's funny how, in hindsight, I can watch some of his videos and see a lot of those mannerisms or some of the way he does comedy in me, and I'm like, fuck, I bit the shit out of him. That being said, in high school, I definitely was like at my lowest of watching him when he was still actively uploading, but I was still like aware of him in my peripheral vision. Like, I'd just see what he was up to every now and then, or check out a video of his if it ended up in my recommended for some reason. And by the time I was a teenager going through fucking puberty, the memories of watching classic YouTubers like Ryan Higa, but also others like Smosh, Ray William Johnson, but still the strongest for me, Ryan, was a shared nostalgic experience that you could share with some of the folks that maybe you met at school. It's like one of those touchstones that I can like track the progress of my life through by seeing where my relationship to this thing was at that point in my life. Ryan has very strongly influenced me if I haven't haven't made that clear. I truly believe that Ryan's videos were the catalyst for me wanting to make my own. Like, his videos were not just how I found out I wanted to create things, but what I wanted to create. YouTube is the medium I've wanted to do things in since I was a kid. The perception at the time was that if you were a YouTuber, like, making it was if you stopped being a YouTuber and then went to traditional media. Nowadays, folks who are my age or grew up around that time, and especially for kids these days, being the YouTuber is often the final goal. Like, that's where these kids want to be. That's how I was when I was a lot younger. Like, I wanted to make YouTube videos. I didn't want to make YouTube videos as a platform to go into movies, or it's not like I'd never considered doing those things. It's just that wasn't the reason why I wanted to be on YouTube. And y'all know I sold out at some point. I've killed at least 3 of y'all's hearing with my music, and I'm very proud of it. But being where I am now, because of everything I've experienced, I hear people say like similar things about my videos that I felt about Ryan's. I know a lot of creators struggle with like thinking their content is good, or like that they put out quality or worthwhile stuff, imposter syndrome kind of thing. It's really easy to have a knee-jerk reaction like, what? No, that can't be. You need to get better standards. I've definitely made jokes about how you guys need better taste if you watch my videos, but you know, I wanted to process it authentically at least a little bit, and it's cool. It's very fulfilling to hear that your work can have a similar impact on some people. It doesn't even need to be like massive, just having that for somebody at all, in the same way that you felt about the content you grew up on that inspires you to do things. It's that idea of like you had a hand in that next generation of creators, and people are gonna make some cool shit that might not have ever gotten made if some of us weren't making what maybe we even consider to be doo-doo. The pursuit of perfection is pointless, but it's still worth it, and I think it's because of things like that. And even like today, Ryan is someone who I look to as like a kind of I don't want to say blueprint, that seems a little like mechanical. And with everything I described, I see that he was on this site for ages. When YouTube first became something you could start making money off of, when I started making money off of YouTube years after that, and honestly, even today, like there's a lot of folks who just don't think YouTube has any longevity. And that was kind of the impression I was under as well. Like I had never really followed a YouTuber for more than a year or two. That's since changed, but Ryan is like the big glaring exception, if he even is an exception. Watching him stay kicking and still creating despite like some of the things that were working against him, like algorithm changes at the time, or lack of drive, or the scale of his productions. Seeing him still push through and just make really impressive stuff, and arguably still being at the top of his game, was really inspiring. Like, he didn't leave until he himself chose to. If you're wondering what he's been up to recently, for the last few years, I think since the pandemic started, Ryan's been doing a lot of streaming on Twitch. He usually streams Valorant, which is a real shame. Everybody's got a flaw. And honestly, he seems like he's enjoying, like, kind of taking this more laid-back approach to content. Like, I remember hearing into some of his update videos how he was kind of miffed with how much he was putting into videos and how it just didn't feel like it was always worth it, if I recall correctly. It's just, if I'm reading this right, it's cool to see him feel like he's under less pressure and just do some stuff for himself, because he has left a fucking incredible legacy. Anyways, that's all I got for today. If you guys want to get a potential topic of yours picked for a video, hit that email, kwytebox@gmail.com. Whether that's things you want advice on, stories you got, or just ideas for things of me to talk about, hit that box. Anyways, piss off.